Hello, everyone, and welcome to the International Society of Chief Data Officers session on how to shape the internal conversations around data quality. I'd like to introduce your moderator today, Glenn Carney. Glenn is a leader, a learner, an architect, an entrepreneur, and a speaker and trainer with many organizations, and it's our pleasure to have Glenn kick off the presentation and discussion with the team. Glenn, I understand that you're going to be introducing the panelists, so I will pass it over to you. Glenn.
Thank you, Robert. Well, welcome everyone. I'd like to introduce first our panelists. We're fortunate today to have two panelists with us. I'll start with Linda Bevelo. Linda is currently the head of derivatives and treasury technology at US Bank, based in Chicago. Linda has been with US Bank since 2007 and has served there as a principal architect, a senior group application manager, a data architect manager, and a manager of data management. Linda describes herself as a technology and banking professional who focuses on data to deliver quality products. Welcome, Linda. And also our other panelist, Linda Powell. Linda Powell is the global head of data governance, data reporting, and end-user computing at Citibank. She has over 20 years of experience in the finance industry, including commercial banking, banking supervision, and supporting economic research. Before joining Citi, she spent most of her career with the Federal Reserve System. She was also the Chief Data Officer at the Treasury Department's Office of Financial Research and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. She's published several papers on the topics of data standards, metadata, and data strategy. Linda has a BA in economics from Rutgers University and a Master of Science in quantitative finance from George Washington University. Please welcome Linda Bevelo. And our third panelist is Dr. Peter Aiken. Dr. Aiken is an professor of business at Virginia Commonwealth University and is a associate director to the isCDO. With that, I'll hand it off to Peter to continue the introductions.
Glenn, thank you so much. And Linda, thank you both for joining us today. This was actually a specific response to a request that I asked these two data experts to join us today for a topic. And I'm going to take us to a sort of a starting place to get the conversation started. And that is that when you're talking about data quality, it's kind of a hard topic for people who are not data people. Because while we have lots and lots of data challenges that are there, they don't always reflect as data challenges. Sometimes they reflect as a business process or a system challenge. Because of course the users, the part that Linda has in her title there, which may be why she's got that title, and we can ask her about that when we get a little closer into it, is that they see something that's a business challenge, and they have to understand that there's a business process and or potentially a business system that also requires data. And these data problems show up as what our colleague Tom Redmond calls hidden data factories. And these hidden data factories manifest themselves in many different ways in different organizations. But an example might be that Department A is delivering work products to Department B, and Department B has to make some corrections as part of their normal process because they know that anytime they get anything from Department A, they have to check to make sure, again, fill in the blank, whatever it happens to be. Similarly, Department B might finish their work, deliver the work all the way to the customers, and still have to deal with errors and consequences there. And these hidden data factories mean that when we look at how our knowledge workers are spending their time, they are spending their time 80% dedicated to looking for stuff and 20% of the time doing useful work. Because these hidden data factories are all over the place. And I was working on another phrase for this because we used to say death by 1,000 cuts, but the problem is none of our organizations are dying. Again, the banks that we're talking about here are big and very successful banks. But we probably could say something along the lines of we're bleeding perhaps more than we need to. And again, that's probably not a very good metaphor either. So at that point, I'm going to sort of back off a bit and ask Linda, and I'm going to let you guys decide who gets to go first. what are your thoughts around how you motivate people to think about data quality? Does the hidden data factories make a good metaphor, or is there something else that we should be using? What sort of things have you all done over your career?
Linda, you're welcome to go first if you like, or I'm happy to.
I guess I'll jump in. I think data factories is a good analogy, a way to talk about it. I think data matters, right? So business folks, as part of their process, as part of balancing, they try to make sure that the data is right and accurate, and they have a certain level of data quality checks. And so I think when you're speaking, depends on your audience who you're speaking to, but I think a term that resonates with me is making data matters, right? Yeah, you can have the fanciest system in the world, and if the data is wrong, it's worthless. So that's what I would add. I'll turn it over to you, Linda.
Sure. So I don't have a whole lot more to add to that. Yeah, but other than there are a lot of hidden data factories, and I have historically in my career actually run some hidden data factories, and it's now part of my job to try and identify and remediate hidden data factories. But I think along with the data factories, you talked about, death by 1,000 cuts, and I agree that it's not death by 1,000 cuts because we're getting work done and we are able to produce things. But what I've observed in pretty much every organization where I've worked is there what I like to refer to as the data heroes. It's data moves all along its life stream, and the end user needs to do something specific with it, and there's something wrong with that data. And then there's always a data hero who comes in at the 11th hour and is able to fix whatever those problems are to make that data usable and fit for purpose. But those hidden factories, sometimes create the need for the data hero, or sometimes do the work of the data.
So the heroes are unfortunately part of our culture, aren't they? We end up with people that like to be heroic, and they tend to kind of hold the information close too, right, Linda?
Oh, I will say, other than a few rare examples, I haven't found a ton of people that are hold the data too close. Oftentimes, I think in organizations, you'll find that the data heroes get burnt out pretty quickly, and they would often like to have the straight through processing and the data quality that is required, because you get burnt out pretty quickly. So there are I have encountered individuals who like being, I used to call them the fireman, or I heard an analogy once about never mind, coming in and putting out the fires, but that gets exhausting. And so I think eventually the firemen would rather work on fire prevention than putting out the fires.
Well, of course,
so Linda,
go ahead, Ligon, I'm sorry.
Excuse me. So Linda, do you find that, or either Linda, I guess, since we have two Lindas, do you find that the presence of data heroes is different and has a greater or lesser impact from one organization to the other that you've been in? Or do you generally not find that those folks are ready to get out of their role? And how does that gel with the culture of the organizations you've seen, or follow the culture of the organizations you've been with?
So I'm happy to start that one off. And I will say, I've seen data heroes in every organization that I've worked at. they're generally well known throughout the organization. I will say though that I think the need for data heroes is greater in organizations that don't have as good a data management process, that they need someone who knows things. They know when data just looks off and where the problems might be and how to dig them up. Organizations that have really good, data management and data governance and straight through processing. They don't need the data heroes quite as much, although I don't think you ever get rid of that need 100%. But it isn't a primary part of the data management culture in those organizations. Linda?
Yeah, I agree with that. I've seen data heroes in all throughout my career and all different divisions. They are very popular people. They can resolve problems that no one else can because they know the data. I would agree in an organization where you have a stronger data management or data governance process, you start to share that knowledge within a tool, within your process, within your governance, to where more people can assist than just having the one expert that everyone's running to get the answer. So I would agree with your statements.
And then I'll just interject and say that from a quality perspective, I think it's the duty of the governance effort to take that information out of those people's heads and make it formal so it can be accessed by the rest of the organization. I've been writing that into charters of the clients that I work with to say that, it's not just a nice thing to happen, it's something that absolutely should happen. So strong yes on that one.
Yeah.
So,
yep, I agree.
How do, and I want to move away, I think, from the subject of data heroes a little bit to more towards data quality. So I guess as a segue, is there a pattern that you see in how, because data heroes is a generalization for how a lot of less sophisticated and less mature organizations manage data. How do data heroes impact data quality, and how does that impact the implementation of a program for data quality and governance?
So I'm not sure I understand the question.
Do data heroes impact data quality negatively or positively?
Well, the reason you have a data hero is because you might have problems with your data quality and they go in and fix it. So they almost certainly have a positive impact. The goal would be to not need a data hero because you've got good data management processes and governance in place beforehand.
Yes, I would agree with that. So on how does data heroes impact data quality? I think I agree with the statement that they make the quality better, but because it's kind of a one-stop shop and they're limited in numbers, right? Everything has to go through that process to have better data quality, right? It has to go through the hero. In a data governance program where you're striving for better data, you're sharing that knowledge and that quality becomes better, in theory at least, right? That's what you're trying to accomplish. If you're sharing the knowledge to make the data better with a broader audience, then you should have better data quality in general.
So I think the idea is how do we move from a less mature model where data heroes are instrumental in data quality to a more mature model where we've harvested their knowledge of where the bodies are buried, so to speak, in the data, right? Do you have any thoughts on that? How do you begin a process?
Absolutely. So I think every good data management regime starts with a data strategy and a governance policy. you have to have a strategy, whether you call it a strategy or not, that is the roadmap of where do you want to go for your data program. And then you need a policy that supports that strategy and adheres to, in my opinion, adheres to industry best practices. So I will say that I've stood up a couple of chief data offices, and the data strategy, whether we called it a data strategy or not, was always the first step. It's what are the pain points of the business? What are the main things we need to be able to accomplish for the business? And what do we need to do to be able to tackle those things? And I'll share that, oftentimes the first things you need are good metadata, because if, as Linda Bevelo was just saying, you need to be able to share information about the data. So if you don't have good metadata, then your data heroes are the only ones who have it, and they have it in their head. And that isn't just an efficiency problem. It's also a continuity of operations risk, because if that data hero leaves, then you've lost that institutional knowledge, and you need to rebuild it, and that actually costs money to rebuild it. So, Linda
B.
Yeah, so I would say I agree with the strategy standpoint from a data governance perspective. I started the first one at US Bank in 2007 in the mortgage division, and the business need there really was the quantity of data. It was just overwhelming. So I think in mortgage, a standard amount of data that's available out there for a single mortgage tied to a record is over 15,000 data elements. And if you can imagine the daunting task of understanding business rules around 15,000 data elements. So I think you do have to have a strategy. I think you have to focus on what's important. Where do you start, right? What's the first thing? So I think a strategy is the first thing. I think just focused on, ask yourself what's most important. Metadata, Linda mentioned metadata, that's important, right? What we started to do is we just started to define interfaces and the things that we touched. We defined screens and how that data is stored, eventually getting to full lineage and a good understanding of each data element with a good, strong definition. Some of the more successful programs I've seen have the ability to expand definitions as you go. So what do I mean by that? A data dictionary to define all the data elements that you use, right? What's the definition to the business? But if you make that definition expandable and you have people have the ability to comment, provide their business knowledge, that's my principal balance, but for certain types of loans, it really means X, Y, Z. So when you give folks the ability to expand your data knowledge, your data dictionary, I've also seen that very successful. So I would agree. I think a starting point is a strategy, and then focus on what's most critical to you, and then start in a way that you can correct, enhance as you go, right? So if you have a basic framework and you can always make it better, you're always going to be walking towards a better end product.
So a question that comes to mind is, when you started down that path, did you start to try to work on everything at once? Or did you choose specific domains of data? And how did you go about selecting those data? Was it objectively by saying we're going to look at all, sounds like Linda B, you looked at mortgage data initially, but did you objectively select those, or did you base your choices on business strategy and business need?
Yeah, so I think the first one in the mortgage division, and in 07 I did one at US Bank. I've done data programs before US Bank even, more like in 1998. But I think, yeah, you do it. What's your biggest benefit? And what we analyzed is, what are we touching based on what is this thing we're doing? So you typically do a data dictionary or a data governance program or data management program based on some need, right? So in 07, that need of that mortgage division was, we're in the middle of a conversion, right? So we're converting one system to another system. It's important you understand your data. We're touching everything anyway. So why not take all your interfaces, all your screens, all your data elements, all your reports, and get them in a place that makes more sense. So I think it depends on how and why you're implementing it. So for us, the need was the conversion, and then we would look at what the most critical things were in that conversion. There was priority on that conversion. Although we needed to convert everything, we had some priority. So we took priority objects or interfaces or things that we had to touch, and define those things as we went through that conversion. In other cases, I've seen data management programs spun up for different reasons, regulations sometimes, Basel reporting, some high-risk reporting, some MRAs. So I think it's what's driving it to start, and then how do you prioritize and figure out the things you start with, and then what's your minimum viable product, right? What will give you benefit? In some cases, I've rolled out a data dictionary first, just to give everyone a place to look up what these things mean. In other cases, there was more components, I would say, to the overall strategy, to the overall program that were all rolled out together. So I think it depends on what your business need is that you're tying your data management or data governance program to.
Linda Powell,
Yeah, I agree. It's all about prioritization and where your organization is, and what those priorities are going to be different from my organization. And I'll share that I've worked for organizations where, frankly, the first priority was we didn't have any place to keep the data. So our first priority was to implement a data technology environment. And there's other places where they've got the data technology environment, but they didn't have any metadata, or other places, exactly what's the biggest pain point is going to be different from organization to organization. So my approach is I like to talk to a variety of business leaders, and this worked particularly well in one of my previous organizations. I talked to all of the business leaders. It was a much smaller organization than Citibank. So talked to all of the business organizations and said, what's your biggest pain point? Forget about the fact that I'm the chief data officer. Just tell me, what's your biggest pain point? Because most pain points, often lead back to data, even if people don't realize that it leads back to data. And so I got a lot of pain points, and then I went and summarized them and found that most people had the same pain points. They might have talked about them differently, but I had to translate from the business to data. Then I prioritized it. Okay, everybody in the organization is having a problem with they don't know what data they have, or how to find it, or how to get access to it. If that's a pain point that everyone in the organization is having, then I'm going to solve that one first. I also looked for, when you're standing up a new data organization, it's really, really important to have a couple of quick wins that are impactful. So I knew, that creating a dictionary, I had done it before. I knew what needed to be in it. I knew how to do it. I was able to get, an enterprise-wide dictionary stood up within about 3 months. That was a huge win. Everyone went from, oh my God, it took me 2 weeks to find this out, and now I can find it out in seconds. That was a quick, relatively easy win. After that, I could tackle the things that were a little harder and were going to take a little longer, but might be even more impactful. But starting with where are the pain points, translating that into how can my data management program help with those pain points, and looking for a couple of good quick wins is a good way to start.
Yeah, I would echo that, Linda. Quick wins is important. Many people will understand a data governance program or a data management program, or the names change over the years, and some people won't. And it is better to have a quick win where people get that aha moment. Oh, wow, this is nice, right? So in mortgage, we had that when we were in the middle of a conversion. We could run a query and determine, oops, we missed a couple things, and here's the impact, and oh, this is going to production tomorrow, and we got to fix this in 2 hours. Yep. So yeah, when you get a quick win, or you have the aha moment where people can look at a data dictionary and say, wow, I used to have to go to the data specialist and ask a question and wait in line and wait for my response to get the answer, and now I could just open up the definition and know what it is. Yeah,
making things self-service so that when I'm there at 7 o'clock at night and there is no one to ask, I can still get an answer to my question, so I can do my 15-minute thing. It goes a really long way. One, it goes a long way towards productivity, and two, it goes a long way towards goodwill.
And this is Peter. I'll jump in here with a quick observation that the reason I asked both of you on this is because you've both been very long-term successes in this business. And first of all, this business measures long-term success in years. You guys have been at this for decades on this. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit to what has, from a quality perspective, helped you to continue to be successful in these endeavors, because we have lots of colleagues that are out there and they try it here and they try it there and it doesn't work. And a CDO, our basic half-life of the CDO now is about 12 months still. So we're looking very much like CIOs did when they first started to come out. But Linda B., maybe you can talk to what has sustained you. What are the things from a quality perspective that have enabled you to continue? You've been with the same bank for 12 years at this point. Linda, you were with the Treasury Department, I think, for 20 years, if I recall correctly. These are long careers, and they're very distinguished careers as well. What has been the key to your success in these areas?
Yeah, so for me, I think it's, as Linda just pointed out, quick wins, right? Knowing that there is a reason and there is a benefit for data quality, and sometimes knowing that on your own may not sustain much, but showing people, illustrating, getting buy-in, it's kind of a continued effort. In my area, all the times I've done some type of data governance data program, whether it's in a business line or across business lines, I think the best way to sustain it and get benefit is make it self-serve, make people use it. You have to market it, right? You have to use the data quality as a solution for a business problem, as Linda mentioned before, right? What are your pain points? What are your business problems? Let me show you how I can fix this, right? So I think you have to manage it 360 also from a standpoint of business side and technology side. So you have to not only show it helping the business side, you have to also show it helping the technology side. And if you can cross both borders, then I think you can have more success.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I'll say, as you were talking, Linda, sort of 3 things came to mind for me. One, you need to be able to speak to the business in business. I spent 20 years working for the Federal Reserve with economists. I speak economist. I still catch myself. I make lots of economic jokes, and the people that I work with now look at me like I have 3 heads. But I had to be able to speak to them in terms of regressions and first derivatives, and how it was going to impact, how the storage impacts their ability to do time series analysis versus cross-sectional analysis. If I couldn't do that, they didn't understand the value that I could bring. I then worked for an agency that was 90% lawyers. And I think I put people to sleep in the first couple meetings that I had with them because I didn't know how to speak lawyer. So I learned how to speak lawyer and to put data management in terms that were meaningful and helpful to lawyers. So you have to be able to speak the business language, and you have to understand what the business is doing. The second part is, Linda mentioned marketing. Half the job when you're working in data management is marketing. People don't understand it. They don't really want to understand it. It's like you're talking math to them, and a lot of people just don't want to talk math. They don't want to talk data and metadata and gigabytes. They just don't want to. They want everything to just work. So it's figuring out how do you constantly in marketing sort of way so that they're interested and they get it and they want to help. And the last is, I've seen a lot of data programs where somebody smart comes in and somebody's typing in the background. Somebody smart comes in and they're like, oh, I'm going to set up a program, and maybe I have a project management background. I'll design a program, set it up. I personally am not smarter than the collective knowledge of the industry. Work off of industry best practices. It's so much easier than recreating the wheel each time you have to do something. If you have to set up a metadata repository, go check and see what are the industry best practices for this. What are the tools that are out there? Creating your own. I have created my own because 25 years ago they didn't have the tools that they have today. But it is so much easier, and you will end up with a better product if you start with what's the Dhamma Book of Knowledge say about data quality or data governance? What does the EDM Council say about how should I be assessing compliance to my policy? Start with the industry best practices and don't recreate the wheel, because most of us as individuals are not smarter than the collective of the entire industry.
Excellent. Thank you. So we're coming close to the end of our time here. We probably have time for one more question and round of commentary. I'm going to ask a question from our audience. And this is probably important. I think we've addressed this somewhat, but maybe we can circle up and be a little bit more precise. And that is, how did you or how do you propose measuring the success of your data program, the data quality program, and maybe how it relates to other elements of data management? How do you measure the success?
So I think there's a couple things there. If you tie it to a business need or a business reason, you measure the success based on that business need. So for example, in banking, there's Basel reporting. If you can show that your Basel reporting is better or can be audited and passes audit and your data quality is high, that would be a success measure. If you tied it to high-risk reporting and you can verify and illustrate that your data quality around your high-risk reporting is passes audit and has benefit there, that would be a way to look at it. I think another way to look at it is use, and I always say that, I said earlier in the conversation that data matters, right? It matters that your data is right. And so there's a lot of projects, there's a lot of technology where high-level folks assume the data is right. And in some cases, if you think about project management tracking, is it on time? Is it on status? Is it on budget? We look at projects different. Are you fast enough? And did you spend the right amount of money? There's sometimes a quality measure on projects, but there typically isn't strong results around governance, I'll say, around data measurements, right? So if you can use your program to validate your data in your process, then I think you can measure success, right? So what do I mean by that? You created a report, you created a file. Is it right? It's one of my favorite questions I ask my team. Well, that's great. How do you know you're right? And when you can start answering that question, and you can start answering that quicker, that's how you can measure success.
I like that. And Linda?
Yeah, so I think this is the hardest question that you've asked. and honestly, it's something I've struggled with throughout my career. How do you prove the value of a data quality program? And so Linda Bevelo's right. You got to institute measures. One of the things is if you have a good data strategy that says, I'm going to fix X, and I'm going to go from it taking 2 weeks to get the answer to a question to taking 30 seconds to get the answer to the question, you can quantify that and measure it. And actually, I've monetized it. How much money did you save by having this question answered in 30 seconds rather than 2 weeks? And those are all important things. I think where I've actually gotten the biggest bang out of, for a program is because it's always, what have you done for me lately? Okay, now I have, I can get all this information within 30 seconds. What are you going to do now? People forget about how you've improved over time. I think where I personally have gotten the biggest bang is when people have discovered that we implemented a change and they had a problem that they didn't know that they had. So I will use a historical example from an unnamed organization, which I will say is not my current organization, where we were managing some data files, and it had been done by some people who were not data management professionals, and discovered that there was some data fields that were being truncated sort of randomly based on the way the set had been set up. And if you're looking at bond ratings, there's a big difference between AA and AAA. And so if you're sort of randomly truncating something from 2 characters to, from 3 characters to 2 characters, that can have a really big impact on analysis. And so once that kind of like the solving of a problem that people didn't know was there occurred, it became sort of a wildfire of wow, we need to make sure we do everything this way because we didn't realize we had a problem, and now the problem is fixed, and I don't know if there's other problems that I don't know about. So I better make sure I do everything following all of the data governance rules. So I think that was actually the most effective way of measuring the value. But Linda's right. In the overall, you need to figure out when you start what are you going to improve, and measure it before, measure it during, and measure it after. But that is often a very hard task.
Excellent. Thank you both. Peter, would you like to take us out?
Sure. Again, I want to thank both Lindas for joining us today for this brief discussion, but I think it's been super valuable to hear. And one of the things we're trying to do at the Society is to really lead by example. And both Linda and Linda have set exemplary careers in the industry. Again, I can just tell you that there are people who bounce around out there. These two have not bounced around. They have been laser focused on their various objectives and done fantastic work. And I'm pretty sure we're going to hear other things from them in the very near future. So Linda, thank you very much for joining us. And Glenn, thank you for moderating. And we look forward to turning this over to you all and getting your questions in just a minute or two.
All right.
I'm trying to find the right button here, but yes, we're all right. So thank you guys. Do we get to a bunch of questions?
Great job.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Linda, you still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Great, good.
Yeah.
Well,
So
again, go ahead, Glenn.
we have, so one of the things, I didn't want to just do it, we already kind of danced around it a lot, but in the webinar, one of the things, Bob Eber, you feel free to speak up here if you have an interest, but I think one of the questions that Bob has is how, if you can separate a data quality program from data governance, and if signing up for one is sort of signing up for both, and how do you how do you start without making it overwhelming? All those things. So I don't know if we have any more thoughts on that, or Bob, you want to clarify that question? And then I don't know how much more time people have. So.
Oh, I can splice it back in, no problem at all. It's up to you guys. You tell us what your time availability is.
I've got, I think, a couple more minutes.
Okay.
I can chime in that I think, I like to go back to basics. And if you look at the DCAM or the DAMA wheel, governance oversees a lot of different things, of which one is data quality. So they're not the same thing, but you're unlikely to have high data quality without data governance, and you're unlikely to do data governance without thinking about data quality. I mean, at the end of the day, you need the data, and you need, you need it to be on time and all of those things, but you also need it to be accurate, because if it's not accurate, then you're going to make bad decisions.
Linda, I'm recalled your example again. You said you had somebody come to you and say, we're done with our project. And you said to them, well, okay, how much of the data did you get? And they went, well, not a lot of it. And you said, well, then you're not really done. And they said, but we met all our requirements. And, if we don't specify those requirements more directly, we're going to have that kind of a short-sighted attitude continue to face us.
Yes, and that is a good example of data quality, right? And so I think sometimes I've seen data governance programs fail, and sometimes I think they fail when it's too much of a check the box, right? Did we do this? Yep, check the box. Did we do this? Yep, check the box. Did we do this? Yep, check the box. And when I talked before about how do we know it's right, that's an important question to ask. And your data quality becomes more valuable when you can answer that question. How do we know it's right? And so what Peter was talking about was my business case around data governance and data quality. And it actually realized the bank realized $40 million as a result of the data quality in capital requirements, okay? Because we followed the exact same process and we were able to check those boxes, right? So we said, it was in the development world. We were developing a Basel interface for capital requirements. We had to go through all the steps, right? What are the requirements? We did it. We coded to the requirements. The development team delivered the exact requirements, and we got to testing and we fell short. We weren't right. We didn't capture all the loans there. And what would have happened in a regular scenario was we would have said, well, that's just because we're in a test environment, or, oh, that's just because, in production, it'll be right. What would have, had we put that into production as is, we met the requirements, we followed the process, we checked the boxes, and we were wrong. And so we iterated through to make sure we had accounted for and we could balance and we could have data quality and we knew we were right. We could get to the right total. And because we had that balancing step, which was nowhere in the requirements, nowhere in the data governance plan, nowhere anywhere, it's just we had that as our step, we knew we were wrong and we iterated through till we were right. And it was a lot of data quality issues that was making us wrong, right? The data wasn't being selected for the report based on some criteria that the business was unaware of. They gave us the requirements based on what they knew. They didn't give us the requirements based on the real data. So we had to basically iterate through it. But yeah, I think the point there is for any data quality and to make the data governance valuable, more valuable, getting the data quality right and being able to show and monetize and track that is a good story.
Thank you.
That, yeah, that the project that I'm referencing, the business realized that had we just done the development work, I'll call it the good old-fashioned way, they would have been short. So they recognized that the extra effort to know we were right, to balance, to do that extra step was worth it. So.
And again, translating it directly into dollar signs that everybody was able to understand from a common perspective. Bob, again, this is your shot at these guys. They've got to run in a bit, but any questions from you and your team?
No, those are it. I mean, that's where we're at. The crux of where we are is we've got a fledgling data governance program, and I love what you guys have said. You know, don't reinvent the wheel. We have based our governance off DMBOK for the most part, which makes sense. But we have this hole where the people who participate in our governance council aren't really quality minded. And so one of my teams, the data architecture team, is working to put together a data quality strategy. And that's where we've kind of struggled is we know things that need to be done, but how do we get in there with the business to be able to prove to them this is worth it. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to do, not just one time, but continually. That's where we're at a crossroads right now, trying to put together a data quality strategy and roadmap and present that to our data governance committee to say this is how we'd like to proceed. And we're just trying to learn from other people's experiences on how to approach that. And I think you guys have both offered a lot of great information. And I think monetizing this, we just got to figure out what it is we're going to go after and monetize and how we can. I like it, being able to go and talk with the business, which we're not super close to the business. I think we need to increase that relationship or make that a better relationship.
Great. Well, Bob, I'm glad we were able to meet your needs. And again, thank you for allowing us to share this with the broader community. I'll turn this into a recording. I'll edit out some little bits and pieces in here, and we'll set up a date for sometime later in the fall where hopefully we can get all of you guys back online, let this thing play, and then you guys can answer 10, 15 minutes of questions or so if we've got some other people from the broader CDO community that want to chime in on this.
Linda, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure.
I would say that twice. Linda, thank you. It's good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
So I think I just hit stop button on this or something. Let's say stop showing screen.